Hello and welcome to the Healthwaves podcast. My name is Eilish. I'm your host and nutritional therapist. So, nutrition is all about working with foods to support our health and well-being and bringing foods in that we know will help us in every way. Today, I am talking to Irene Flannery, the nutritional therapist based in Dingle in County Kerry. Irene works with a food-first approach in everything to do with health. Irene has a very interesting background in how she came into the nutritional therapy space. So you're very welcome on Fáilte Road, Irene.
Thank you for having me back here. It's beautiful.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
So Irene, you were chatting to me earlier about how you have a science background and then you ended up going down the nutritional therapy route. Would you like to fill us in a little bit about that and your whole approach to foods?
I suppose I arrived in nutritional therapy in a roundabout way, but having done my leaving cert with all science subjects, I was a right science head. I went on to study medical lab science in Dublin, and I did about 3 years, and I actually didn't finish it. I couldn't hack Dublin, and I came home. Eventually, I settled in Dingle, and I opened a restaurant. My second love was food. After the first restaurant, I opened a second one at a seafood bar. After that, it got too busy for me. I found myself as a single parent at that point. So Eloise and I had to take another direction, and I looked for a real job. I wasn't long in my real job when my sister was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, my sister Ursula, at the age of 37. I knew I could help her out from a food point of view because that's all I ever did was cook for people and my family. We were a big family of 7 children. I knew that was going to be my role. But when I really went looking at it, it was very confusing out there. Now, we didn't have as much doctor back in 2003. I decided I must study this. So now I found myself finding this course in nutritional therapy that ticked my science box and ticked my food box. I said, where have you been all my life? I dived into that course and ate up every single word. I just relished the whole thing. It definitely helped Ursula and it helped me grow in confidence because everything I was learning, creating a recipe around it, I was making it into a dish that she would enjoy or that we'd all enjoy together. And the whole thing just fascinated me to see how science on a page becomes my next meal. And from there, I haven't separated the two ever since. So I'm now qualified. I qualified in 2008. So anyway, many years and many meals later, here I am, still pushing the food first approach.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And with nutritional therapy, obviously it's evidence-based, it's very science-backed. And then the beauty, I think, of your food background and having run restaurants, that you're able to then pair the two together.
Yeah.
And makes you probably an ideal, fabulous then nutritional therapist. You're able to give all the support in the actual practical side of the recipes and putting the foods together in a gorgeous way, not just saying, eat this, that, this, but then actually being able to make, really help clients then.
Exactly, because we could
put it into practice.
All the time. Part of my process is listening to that client and through their story, whether it's a health goal they want to attain or they've got a recent diagnosis of an illness, I'm constantly listening to what they're having for breakfast, lunch and dinner. I'm like, okay, that needs that and that needs that. How am I going to get that? We'll put some greens here and we're going to add some walnuts in this one and we're going to put some fish at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And this is all happening and they're just there for it. And I'm like, okay, I've got this. Do you know how sometimes when you have a client and they want to this consultation is over and they want to have the little chats, I'm just like, no, you have to go now because I need to put this out of my head now into your protocol. So they're like, push you out the door. And then I set to work. I start with their meals and recipes and I work my way back to the protocol and the whys and all that come into it.
And I think that's exactly what you said, the whys come in. When people understand why you're throwing in walnuts on top of something or you're taking out one oil and putting in another oil and why you're doing that, it makes sense to them. And then they'll be more proactive about making that
and more
change.
Compliant. It's a win-win because it's going to taste good because I come from that background.
And that's a big thing as well. Taste good.
Yeah. And to make it easy. You don't have to spend hours slaving because you've been to see a nutritional therapist. It doesn't have to be another chore. Always kind of looking, okay, how can we maximize your time? And I ask those questions. What's your budget like? What's your skill set like? What's your time like? I need to know all that.
Yeah.
And then I'll come up with something.
And sometimes it's a case of tweaking what they're already eating. So it's not a huge change.
Exactly.
Before making
The next step.
You write for West Kerry, the local magazine.
Yeah.
You've done lots of other writing. What I love about your recent work is, well, you've always run programs, I think, really to make it more accessible to everybody and the local community, which is great. And recently your programs had a focus on aging. And we both absolutely hate the word anti-aging.
We do. It can't be, you can't anti-age anyone.
No,
there's nothing wrong with it. We're all heading that way, and it's a real privilege to be there because we know people who didn't quite make it.
I know,
to age.
absolutely. It is a privilege.
And an exciting one. And, the whole anti-aging kind of takes that worthiness out of being an older human being.
Absolutely.
Which I think we're fantastic.
We are, and we grow more.
And
We're grow older.
Going to be more awesome as we head into the next decade. I do find that my focus in my own practice has paralleled with what's going on in my own life.
That does happen.
So that is funny,
naturally.
So now I'm the aging expert on the Dingle Peninsula.
And looking amazing on it. So tell me a little bit about, what are your key areas when you're working on a program that's supporting aging healthy?
Week 1 is ground zero, and I really focus on the kitchen and your basic staples.
Your store cupboard ingredients.
I call that pantry bliss. Every program begins with that. And it opens up a really lovely conversation. My most recent programs have been run during the morning. So they're predominantly attended by women. But these women, because they're free in the morning, are either retired or of an age that they're not working. So I'd say from 50s right up to 80, that was kind of the age group of women, say for the very most recent one. It's great to have their take as well, because they remember cooking with whole foods. I remember seeing very little boxes and packages in my home as a child. My mom was a great cook. My dad was a fisherman. We ate everything. There was vegetables up the garden, even though we were townies. There was a great focus on food. I don't think Mom ever left the kitchen. And then there was so many kids. So I kind of love listening to their stories, because I always try to find out, but when did you stop making porridge and started eating?
I know. And I would have been similar, even growing up in Dublin, with very much whole foods growing up. But then the whole processed foods definitely came in, and my mother was a good cook. And I'd love to find out, well, why? What happened?
What message were you being told? And it's very clear that it was, if you didn't have this, it's because you couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge thing back then. It's kind of incredible, really.
Cornflakes were a real treat. My kids think that's hilarious.
They were, yeah. And I just remember all of us were on the table as a box, just because everyone wanted to read what was on it. So if I was reading the back of it, my brother would pull it and he'd go to the side, and someone else is reading. There was a gang of us around the table. We're all pulling at the box. I suppose they weren't the worst ones. There's much worse. Yeah.
And those conversations must be great when you're chatting to the women of different generations. But tell me, I know from working with clients of a certain age, it's very, very difficult to rewind and go back to, say, healthy fats, because we've been indoctrinated, particularly anyone growing up, 60s, 70s, 80s, low fat. And I find myself that can be a difficulty. So what kind of conversations do you have around fats?
So around the fats it's a huge one, because, first of all, it's an ingredient that we use every day. It would be much better if you used olive oil rather than a seed or nut oil. And they're like, what? But I thought vegetable oil or sunflower oil or whatever it is. And then you're, like you said, you're kind of undoing that learned narrative that they picked up because of maybe the cholesterol myth, or maybe the things like that all these fats will clog up your arteries. And that was very visual, and that people could see, butter all inside my arteries. It really stuck in their brain.
It did.
I'm kind of trying to undo that. And I'm like, well, let's just think of it logically. What did your mother, what did your grandparents cook? It was that perfect saturated fat. It's ideal for those high temperatures. But the next one down is your olive oil. And your seed and nut oils do not belong on top of a cooker or near the heat. So let's keep them out of there. That would probably take up nearly the half the first
I can
class,
imagine.
because
Yeah.
there are so many stories around that. And they're kind of going like, what? The lard was okay. Well, yeah, it was okay in a certain amount of time. And insofar as it could tolerate the heat and it wouldn't go rancid and it wouldn't cause harm to your body.
Yeah.
Whereas these cheaper oils that were, if you go into the supermarket, you could see all the different vegetable oils, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil. You can't get past it. I often notice how many people just stand there in front of that going like,
They're so confused. It's very confusing.
in the class, you're able to say, look, if it's in a plastic clear container, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
Get your olive oil, go for extra virgin, make sure it's in a dark glass bottle, and you don't have to find out anything else about it.
Yeah.
If someone has gone to the trouble, that producer gone to the trouble to put it into a lovely dark glass bottle, it's worth being in there.
Yeah.
You can, and to give people that bit of confidence around
In
making
choosing.
those things,
Yeah.
because it's getting harder all the time.
And yet it's really simple.
So trying to make it simple.
Choosing butter, olive oil, and so it really is bringing it back,
Bringing
making
it
it very
back to
simple
the-
and
yeah.
ignoring all of those.
The noise that's out there. If you go through the supermarket, the more packaging, the more color, the bigger the noise, the more reasons they print on the box to eat this is probably the more toxic and more
Yes.
processed it is.
The more
convincing
health
they
claims
need
that
to do.
have
Yeah.
put on the box.
And meanwhile, your packet of cannellini beans is just sitting there, nice and
nothing
quiet for
written on
itself.
it.
So listen to those ones.
Very good. I like that. Can we go back to what happened to our body as we age? Why do we need the extra support with nutrients? What is happening? Some is our health issues or more health issues as we age.
I thought one of the main things that are happening in the driver for the aging process is oxidation. So we're literally rusting slowly. We want to be able to halt that. If you live long enough, you are going to rust. So what can we do? It's like your bicycle. What would you do? You slap on some oil. So oil is really important.
Yeah.
That's where our good fats are really important. And the other things then are the things that are antioxidizing or antioxidants. That's all our color.
Berries.
Your blueberries, your greens, your reds, oranges, purples,
All the
whites
colour.
even. Every
Yeah.
color, every pigment in every plant, edible plant, has a role to play in the aging process.
Yeah.
Not just for kids and toddlers. There's other good things in there and other things in those pigments that are particularly good for younger children or in puberty or in fertility. When you come to the aging, we really need these pigments because they slow down the degeneration of brain cells. They keep our cells, our neurons connecting with each other. So what I think up here will actually happen here in my hands.
Yeah.
That those lines of communication stay fired up and are constantly firing. If you don't have those nutrients in your diet, the rusting process will stop that. And you've got no backup because you've got nothing in there to shield that or to prevent it, or you've no oils in there to make sure that there's a barrier between the rusting process and my neurons. So it's very, very important to make sure that every meal has a purpose and a reason, and everything you eat is fighting for you rather than against you.
Yeah.
And I think if you can get that right 80% of the time at least, you probably just glide through old age and arrive at death's door intact. Dead, but
That's what I
intact.
want. I know. I love the approach of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Peter Attai, is it Attai? A-T-T-I-A or whatever. And he talks about preparing for, what does he call it? Oh gosh, I'm out of my head. It's preparing for it's centenarian decathlon, he calls it. So it's preparing for your last decade of life and preparing now. So if you want to be able to, and most people, you don't want to be sitting down for the last 10 years, not able to do anything and having everybody supporting you. So you need to be able to lift yourself up off a toilet, for example.
Yes.
You need to be able to move around, carry your shopping, pick yourself up off the ground if you fall, or pick up a grandchild, or
Put on your own socks.
put on your own tire laces, bend down, open jars and tins, all that kind of thing. What we're doing now is helping us get there.
Absolutely. Inflammation. That's literally what we're trying to prevent with nutrition is the inflammaging. So inflammaging, it's this coining of two words, inflammation and aging. We've discovered that there is a low grade inflammation simmering away from our 20s or 30s or 40s. This is quite a new phenomenon because inflammation is always part of the immune system and would help you if you had a fall and you needed to repair,
comes in.
you'll have inflammation. But once you're recovered, inflammation was turned off. But now they see that it's kind of like the pilot light on the cooker.
Right.
You know, it's a simmering away.
Yeah.
So that's all rusting and aging you more, that heat constantly. And then you start getting older. So when those two things meet, then you are setting up the picture for the diseases and health conditions that are associated with aging.
Yeah.
But they're more associated with inflammation, which is your type 2 diabetes or your Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, certain cancers. They all kind of have the same pathway. So I'm always looking at, well, what can turn off that pilot light?
Yeah.
How can we dampen that? And if it is on, how can I protect my cells from being damaged by this?
So you're talking about anti-inflammatory type food?
Yeah, definitely. They're back to our lovely healthy oils again, our olive oil and our avocados and our nuts and seeds, and then all your colour again. You also need some protein to help repair because damage is being done.
Yeah.
But if you can counteract that damage by having a really good repair system in good, clean, healthy proteins, which can be plant-based, animal-based, or fish-based, or egg-based, or, you know, at the end of the day,
them all.
a nice mixture of all, a very flexy and broad diet. You can't go wrong with that. You're giving your body all the raw materials to combat that inflammation that could be going on in the background. And in some cases, turn it right off, which would be fantastic, you know?
Sugar will play a role in inflammation.
Yes, absolutely. Inflammation through the roof.
And I often find that as people age, particularly with old people, their diet is quite high in sugar, isn't it? Quite high in refined sugar. I just remember my own parents-in-law with an awful lot of biscuits. An awful lot of
Tea and
tea
sugar
and biscuits. Tea and biscuits
and
becomes quite a staple.
and toast.
Yeah.
It's just easy. And I think when you're aging too, the few things going on physically, sometimes you might even have your teeth. So crunching into sourdough crust is not going to happen. So maybe eating, the actual physical thing of eating becomes troublesome. They're like,
or maybe
just have a biscuit for one. And again, that's where I come in with supports and meal plans. Once you know it's only one person, okay, we're going to put cauliflower in. I got to make sure that they're going to have cauliflower for 3 days in a row. We're going to freeze some or use some frozen stuff. And you're constantly, how can I make it easy for this person to eat in a healthy way? That is part of my courses and one-on-ones is looking at that. If it's not easy, it's not going to get done. I'm not going to ask my mom, she's 82, Mom, you really need to start sprouting your own microgreens now.
I know.
You know, she's going to look at me and say, the Today Show is on telly. Whatever time I've left, I'm not going to be watching things sprout. So you have to roll with the punches and make it very accessible for everybody. And everyone's different. Everyone's life circumstances are different. And you're kind of making recipes and meal plans to suit them. The busy person to the person with no time. Person that can't cook. I mean, I have clients that saying, oh, that's a lovely recipe, Irene, but what can I get in the filling station? I'm like, nothing. Petrol, diesel, that's what you can get. But you know, don't go there for your nutrition. Don't outsource your nutrition. Your nutrition is yours. And whether you have the skills, the budget, or the time, you must find a way to do it yourself.
To incorporate it.
It's just so hard to try and find needs on a shelf in the supermarket.
How would you find do you find that the protein needs of the older generation are being met? Do they have enough protein?
I think you're onto something there because I think it's one of the foods or food groups that older people tend to get a bit lazy about. And again, it could come down to that chewing thing with meat or are you going to make it stew for one person? Are you going to actually go to that trouble?
carbs instead, like toast.
I think they do a lot of that. These are the people that nourished
I know.
the likes of me. They spent their whole life nourishing us, and then when it comes to their own nourishment, they take the day off all the time. But so yeah, there has to be better quality food made available to older people, whether they're in a community setting, hospital, home setting, or if they're fending for themselves. It has to be there and easy to access.
Yeah.
We have to work as a community or as a practitioner, kind of work in ways, how can I ensure this person can have maybe porridge every morning?
Yeah.
Or how could I make that lunchtime
And make it more exciting as
sandwich
well.
a good thing? They're not worried about the cost or throwing food away. The very basics in the kitchen around nutrition, which is your oils and your food staples, the quality of the bread you're eating, the quality of your rice or your grains, your fruit and your vegetables, all have to be prioritized and be easy. Supermarkets make it very difficult for people to make good choices.
They're meant to be there to make our lives easier and everything more accessible and quicker, but it's actually harder.
In the local veg shop here, I remember having a chat with Derek about it. I said, if someone old came in here, would you cut a cabbage for them? Would you cut a butternut squash? I find it hard to cut a butternut squash. How can you ask someone? And he said he would. We were just chatting about that, about how can you make it easier for older people to get a bigger variety of food, because their food choices become so narrow and limited. They're not getting the red cabbage anymore. They're not getting
they're not going to buy a full white cabbage. It sounds like your programs give a huge amount of all those little supports. Things, obviously you're giving them a wealth of information, but it's those little things of how to put it into practice then. How to make your cauliflower interesting for 3 days.
Or how to store it if you're not going to have it, or how to freeze it. Or what can you do that you could freeze well and have it for next week.
Exactly.
But I learned as much too in those classes.
I'd say they're lovely.
Because everyone has, they just mightn't have thought of it, but they're like, oh, well, my mom used to do this, or my sister did that. And next thing I have something else for my next class. I'm like, oh, that's a really good one. I'm going to write that down. And it's just that sharing. And just to work out a way that makes healthy eating easy, and you have won the lotto, the aging lotto.
Now, so as nutritional therapists, we also work with lifestyle and supplements and all that. I know that you're interested in the cycles of life. So how does that come into it when you're running these programs, like the whole rhythm of life?
That just makes sense. So there's a lot of logic in the way I think, and I think the way most nutritional therapists would think. But definitely you have to bring in how the day is and how we have evolved alongside our environment and nature. You can't ignore that. Modern living wants you to ignore that, which is why they put out artificial lights everywhere, and why we go to work at a certain time and finish work another time. Then we eat artificial foods and watch artificial programs on the telly. If you can pare all that back and just think, okay, what happens in the morning when I wake up? Cortisol rises, I get out of bed, I need to hydrate. My body has been working during the night, my liver has been working. There's toxins to be got rid of. They're outside the door of my body, or not of my body, but outside my organs. And the dump truck has to come. So I have to get up. And that's why we need to eliminate in the morning. You need to support that. Whatever your activity or your food in the morning is supporting that process of elimination. And that's why we wake up and go to the bathroom and it's all out. That is a real good body clock.
It is. It's so important.
So you need that time. But nowadays people are just up, out of bed, jump into pair of shoes, grab a coffee and go to work. That body clock is still going, but we're not playing ball. That in itself is aging. And then as the day goes on, our main meal used to be in the middle of the day, and our body corresponded by producing the most enzymes and gastric juices
needed
to break down that big meal. Now we're not having that big meal. We're having a white bread sandwich with ham and a slice of cheese or a fillet roll. And we have all this capacity to digest a great meal, but we're actually eating junk, and that's gone to waste. It's going to give you heartburn. It's going to give you a lot of other things, and you're not going to get the nutrition. And then as the day goes further into the afternoon, each part of the day is associated with an organ. So we wake up with our large intestine, we go into our heart, and then we go into our stomach. And then we're in the afternoon, we're going into our small intestine. which I always like, because after your lunch, it's a great time to digest, but also to digest life's problems and to figure things out. It's a great time. And then we go into kidney time, where people call it the 3 o'clock slump. But it's not. It's the 3 o'clock, I need something to drink. I'm dehydrated. 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock is hydrate yourself. So it's a great time for a warm herbal tea, a cup of broth, bone broth. It will pick you up quicker than a Kit Kat and a cup of coffee. And then we go back into the evening. I'm thinking of the person now that's working more than the retired person, but back in the evening between 5 and 7, we tend to be very rushed, stressed, and trying to get our main meal in that little window. Really, that meal should be much smaller, highly digestible, not the big carbs, not all that energy.
Our enzymes and
everything
some of that has eased off at that stage.
Yeah, they're out there. We're forcing a meal in with, I'm going to put down the meat, vegetables, spuds, and everything is coming at it at the same time. And it's just too much. So you're actually going against the clock. You know, we've flipped everything around. Isn't it? And we're just going anti-clockwise the entire time. Our natural rhythm. And that's not sustainable. And that is so aging, because you're making life hard. So just trying to eke out time. And I know people are got work commitments and family commitments, and life gets a bit crazy. But if you can just eke out a little 10 minutes here and 15 minutes there, you know, you'd be surprised how much everything else will flow into place. And again, around our response to going to bed and going to sleep and creating a room that allows you to sleep.
Oh, for sure. A relaxing space, no devices and all of that. Yeah.
You stay up too late or on your phone, you got the news on, you probably have a crime show, and then you go to bed and you're just like, I can't sleep. So I would tell people, do what you do for a baby, do the same for yourself. Would you have the baby watching the news, car crashes, hijacking, killings? Would you do that to the baby and say, okay, now go to bed?
Yeah.
You put the baby in lovely soft clothes, the cot is perfect, the lights are down low.
So true. That's a great way of getting the point across, isn't it? You wouldn't put anyone in a room with the TV before you'd expect them to switch off. I love the power of the circadian rhythm and being in line with it. I certainly try to bring that into my life all the time. And also like stopping eating at a certain, not eating, obviously not 7 days a week if you're out or on holidays or whatever. But most of the time it's brilliant to work with the natural seasons. So you're going to be up a little bit later in the summer and then go with the flow in the winter. Go to bed. I love that. I think I could hibernate in the winter and then I love it. Awake again in summer.
When you really tune into that, it's fabulous. And it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I used to think there was something wrong with me. And come October, I'd be like, what's wrong with me? I could go to bed now. But then when I got to understand the whole rhythm of everything, and now it's like, I'm allowed. You can do that.
And that's where science and nature just meet. Yeah. Or what we've learned in college and attending all the courses that we've done since we qualified, and the stuff that my grandma was talking about. And I'm like, oh, that's why they did that. Oh, okay. And but that ritual was about these things.
It's fabulous. I think that you're more in tune and it is growing around the country, and particularly among women, the power of the moon and the whole cycle of life and embracing our inner strengths and how in tune we are as women to nature. And that's really after, I feel it's after growing in the last few years. I have 3 daughters who are very much, one's very kind of witch-like. They're really embracing that. I'm a little jealous that I'm not back there able to.
But you're in there too.
I love that.
It's fantastic.
It's part of that whole just cycles of nature and aging, and
it's kind of like the Lion King, the circle of life.
Circle of life,
there.
Exactly.
Every day is a circle. Our night and day is a circle. When we rise, we get up. We're at our strongest. We wane. We go down. It's not linear. Living isn't linear. It was never meant to be linear. We're always meant to have this ebb and flows constantly through life. And when we go with that, we're more resilient than for other ebbs and flows and other ups and downs. But if you're already cracked when the menopause hits, there's no way you'll sail through that.
Certainly. I think the stronger you are heading towards it, the more prepared you're going to be for it. that goes for aging. I think if you're heading for 70 or 80 or 90, the more, the stronger you are. And we haven't even talked about the strength training and the physicality. So I know, and
you
it's so important.
did say earlier about preparing yourself to be able to open those things and tie your shoe. Do it.
That's very true.
If you're getting up, I suppose if you're in your 30s and your 40s, and I'm now 55, I'm not going to ask my son, pull me up there off the couch,
I know.
Get up and try and get up without using your arm. And do things. Don't be reckless now. Don't be careless. Keep doing those things that keep us independent. No.
So my little story from last week is that I like to keep fit and healthy. I came off my bike pretty badly and hit my face and head, got a concussion. Flip side, on the good side, the work I've been putting in the last 10 months, particularly, I started doing strength and training exercises. So that alongside with nutrition, a few supplements probably where there's any deficiencies, omega-3, inflammation, things like that. My your bone health, I think, is good. Vitamin D, K2, all of that I have recovered extremely well. Waiting for my nose to completely heal. But I feel brilliant.
It is amazing. Thank you for doing that experiment on our behalf. We are eternally grateful for you flipping off your bike to show us what a good lifestyle and nutrition can do for you. But it's so true, isn't it? Because you literally bounced.
Well, it didn't feel like it at the time, but I did bounce back.
Because your muscles were strong. Everything worked as it needed to for that moment and to take that fall.
Definitely.
And now it's time to recover and to repair. It's great that you're on holidays, like you were saying. You actually had that time to recover and repair, and that's so important. We give ourselves that. And we can do it every day by going to to recover.
I think
and
the
repair.
power of sleep is amazing.
I love it.
And I think that probably helped me too. You've wearables like my Aura ring telling me about my sleep and all of that. And that hardly changed. Looking at where technology, you can embrace it, and looking at how stats change, but how they all came back within a couple of nights, all back to normal. Heart rate, variability, all that kind of thing. But I think I put a lot of that down to sleep, being very much in with the rhythm of the warm baths, arnica, so homeopathic remedy, calendula. And I only took an anti-inflammatory one night just because I've had a bit of bruising.
Incredible. And it's fantastic to see. And, I'm glad that you are recovering well. It just goes to show that if you mind yourself, your body will mind you. We deserve the very best of ingredients to go into our bodies. We deserve the time in the day to consume those ingredients. And this we do. Constant pressure and haranguing and stress. It's not worth it.
No.
There's nothing worth that, because you're missing out on this beautiful life.
I know, and it's such a wonderful life. Would you have 3 tips for healthy aging?
Looking after your gut, so giving it plenty diversity and variety. So don't get stuck on carrots or one thing. We keep it all.
People tend to.
We do. Because it's very important to keep the gut and the microbiome happy. And I think that's a very important part of inflammation, but also for our brain matters. Number 2 would be to try and sync with the day and night.
Lovely.
As possible, much as possible. Because that feeds into then syncing with spring, summer, winter, autumn. And each of those seasons have their own beautiful foods which match our needs for that time of the year. That can really add years of good health span by being more in tune with that rhythm. And lastly is, I think, having an awareness around your purpose and your reason to get up every day and to really embrace that. And if you can't figure it out, seek it out with your friends, family, your tribe, whoever they are, just to have that. And I think if you have them going forward, the other things will fall into place. If you have a healthy diet, you probably won't be overweight. If you stay active, you probably won't be confined to an armchair. All the other things can fall in place if you have some.
All of those things.
It's just really making a plan to make that easy in
Yeah.
your home and to make it
Yeah.
easy and accessible
Yeah.
to stay well. It shouldn't be so difficult. You know,
Brilliant.
that
I think having purpose and then social networks and that gives you purpose in maintaining yourself and your nutrition. Gives
self-care
you drive to do that.
Yeah,
if you have
they
purpose.
all feed into it.
It's all a big...
Because you'll feel worthy enough to actually, I mean, cooking for yourself,
Yeah.
for your family, cooking for yourself and preparing your food is the greatest act of self-care.
Yeah, that's true.
The lavender bath can come in afterwards, but cook for yourself
Now,
and everything that goes into that pot or onto that plate is actually going to work for you.
nourishing you and looking at your food that way and that what's this going to give me?
Set up and really enjoy it and chew your food. Chew the food.
Okay. So this has all been about embracing aging and what we can do then to ensure that we can move along and really continue enjoying life and then be strong.
Up to the last hurrah.
Yeah.
Be
Okay.
part of your own life, really, and not be sitting back and being a spectator.
Hopefully we might have this conversation again when we're in our 90s. Okay, so it was really lovely.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? You're on
.ie, or you can just Google Irene Flannery Dingle and all my details will come up there. But
and you're also on Instagram?
Instagram at omnom.ie.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably the best place to get me now.
So that's where everybody can find you.
You can get me there and...
Okay, well that was absolutely lovely
thank you.
chat.
Thanks for having me.
So meet up weekly.